Hello there, everybody. Welcome along to another episode of the League Two podcast version of EFL Debate. I'm delighted to be joined by my regular guest, Matt Boosey from Gills In The Blood TV, who's still glowing with Gillingham top of the league again.
Told you I'm turning into Matt Farley.
You're enjoying it. I know, yeah. One step at a time, mate. You've got a long way to go.
Happy, hopefully, for the rest of the season.
Absolutely buzzing to get into that, but also delighted to be joined by our special guest Nathan Salt from Rob Ryan Red, the excellent Wrexham podcast. Thanks for coming on, Nathan, and you've dressed smartly, especially for us.
I only dress smartly for you two gentlemen. So this is what the standards we've got over on the Wrexham podcast. No, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great to have you on, mate. And I suppose I just want to talk about Wrexham's start to the season, and what's been a little bit disappointing for me is the defensive form, because speaking to people who have been to one or two of the games, there's this feeling that Wrexham can create chances and have looked dangerous going forward, even without Paul Mullin, and that's reflected in the goal returns. But also, considering how much when you came on to do this summer deep dive, Nathan, we sort of waxed lyrical about the depth that you've got a centre back, and then you've been so leaky. Just talk us through it, mate.
Yeah, well, I wish I could. I'll give it a go. So, going forward, I mean, look, 82 shots, you mentioned that, 82 shots on goal without Paul Mullin, top scorers in the league. That part, you're thinking, that's pretty good. Top scorers without Paul Mullin, we'd have took that all day of the week, and some of the chances, you're looking at those third and fourth choice strikers, Paul Mullin converts those chances. Defensively, it's been... disaster is a strong word, but it's been staggering, really. Some of the mistakes, some of the individual mistakes. I think part of that fell on Ben Foster, just a lack of trust there. Not all on him, admittedly, but he said it himself that he was making mistakes that a few years ago he wouldn't have made. So there's that element to it.
Sure,
they're quite a quiet back three. We've been used to having players like Sean Pearson at the back who you could hear probably over the border. He's that loud. So I'm used to those kind of defenders. It's not necessarily an indictment. Captains and players lead often by example. Now, you don't need to rant and rave, but it's just been a funny one. Owen O'Connell in particular has had a really sloppy start to the season. He was so good when he came in January, whenever it was after Aaron Hayden. Aaron Hayden's not played since January, since he got injured against Sheffield United in the FA Cup.
Is he proving a bigger miss than maybe we thought then, Nathan?
Yeah. I mean, he's our biggest set piece threat, and I think just an assuredness on the ball. I mean, look, I said this on our podcast this week. It's amazing how a player's stock goes up when they don't play. Sometimes not playing, your stock goes through the roof. Right now, it's like, wow, we've got the world's best defender in Aaron Hayden, and he'll play one game and he'll make a mistake, and then everyone will be like, oh, whoever didn't play. Jordan Tunnicliffe, another, joined us from Crawley, was in League Two season team of the year, pardon me, before he joins. Ben Tozer was great last year, played every minute. Again, I think in a way for Wrexham, the reality check has come that we didn't really have to defend an awful lot in the back end of that season. Even most of the season, really. We were on the front foot. It was our wing-backs pushing their wing-backs back. Yeah. Now I'm looking at the weekend, Swindon, Charlie Austin, I think, was licking his lips against Ryan Barnett, peeling off onto him. But Ryan Barnett is great going forward, but defensively got, especially in the first half, got exposed really for the player he is, which is a winger masquerading as a wing back. Jacob Mendy on the other side, has a decent goal return, but again, I can't remember the lad's name. Wide right for Swindon, pardon me. But he had him on toast at times, and I think the reality check has been we're having to defend a lot more, and we don't look like we know how to do that for long spells. And lastly, before I throw it back to you, is that I think there's a franticness to the defending. You see Phil Parkinson a lot in his technical area saying, calm down. They often concede 2 in 3 minutes or 2 in 5 minutes. Almost you need somebody to take the sting out of the game. All right, we've gone 1-0 down. Let's just regroup for the next 10. You don't have to go and chase it. It's like we want to score immediately just to get the fans back on side, get the racecourse back on side and settle everyone down. That's leaving us too exposed, and we are conceding 2 in 5 minutes, 2 in 6 minutes. Yeah. And then suddenly it's double trouble, and we're 2-3, we're 4-1 down or whatever. Sometimes I think we've got to be a little bit smarter, a bit cleverer. We've got enough experienced pros in there to go, if we're 1-0 down at half time, so be it. We'll get chances, we'll prove that. The game's not going to be won in 45, and I think that's what we've got to learn quickly.
Hopefully you can do that. And Matt, coming to you on this, are you? I remember Phil Parkinson's Bolton side doing some damage to Gillingham. I think they beat you 4-0 in the 16-17 campaign. But I'm kind of wondering whether you're maybe surprised from the outside, given we've so often associated Phil Parkinson with really disciplined, well organised, well-oiled machine, that they actually have been as leaky as they have.
Firstly, thank you for bringing that game up.
Always here for you, Matt.
That was the night that AD Pennock played Ollie Muldoon as a left wing back. Literally every goal came down that side, and he turned around afterwards in his press conference and said that he had the winger in his pocket. We were just like, "You need to go now, mate. You really need to go." Anyway, I divulge. I think Nathan made a fair point. I think there is a franticness to the way that Wrexham have played all of their games so far, and that maybe just come from nerves, excitement, the fact that it's been a long time since Wrexham have been in the Football League, and if there's a nervousness perhaps and a franticness on the terraces and in the stadium, then maybe that's then transferring onto the pitch, and perhaps we're seeing it in performances. Obviously, Nathan can tell us more than that. We're only going off of what we see on highlights and seeing posts on Twitter and that type of thing. But clearly, it can't continue. I mean, the scoring is absolutely fine, but 13-all after 4 games is it's unheard of. And I think there's another point that Nathan made, is the fact that they probably didn't have to do too much defending last season. And even if they did give up chances, they weren't punished. Whereas now, I think Wrexham are quickly finding out that if you do give up that amount of chances certainly in a condensed period of time, which seems to be the case as well, you suddenly find yourselves playing catch up a lot of the time. And fair play to them, because teams would have folded, certainly on Saturday, was it 5-3 down or 4-1 down twice? You've got to come back, and certainly approaching injury time, you're thinking it's not going to be our day. So there's certainly something about them in terms of minerals to keep going right to the end and nick something when you're not at your best, or you're conceding too many goals. But I'd say it's probably a mixture of things. And like I say, Nathan's more of an expert than me on Wrexham for sure. But as an outsider, it just looks like that there's an over eagerness, an over-excitement to being back in the Football League, and I'm sure it will settle down. It can't carry on, similar to we can't carry on winning football matches 1-0. Something has to give eventually, whether that's Wrexham lose more games or stops, or just have to sort of reel in the attacking intent to try and get the balance more correct. But I'd imagine it's multiple factors that have contributed to it so far, but I can't see it carrying on too long. Phil Parkinson's a decent manager at the level, as you mentioned, Alton. Sunderland fans might tell us different, but he's done a bloody good job
as well. He's got that promotion this week. Yeah,
so there's certainly promotions on his CV out of this division, and I think he'll get it right sooner rather than later. But yeah, it's a frightening prospect if they're going along at that rate of shots during games without Mr. Mullin. So fingers crossed from the rest of the league that the injury takes a bit longer to clear up, perhaps.
I wanted to raise another point, Nathan, which maybe could serve as some explanation for the defensive issues, because, like we've both talked about, I do rate Phil Parkinson as a defensive coach, which is that there was, I think it's an amazing thing, first of all, that Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney are sort of building the profile of Wrexham, and it's great that you've got that sort of pride in the club and the town, and wonderful thing and all the rest of it. But going to America for the pre-season tour, and the fanfare and the excitement and the sort of a little bit of chaos, I suppose, that kind of came with that for a League Two club. And then to play your last game, I think, in Philadelphia the week before playing MK Dons on the opening day. Would it have been a better thing to have maybe gone to America for a week or two, sort of early to mid-July, and then kind of for the last pre-season friendly, maybe just played Shrewsbury at home or something along those lines, just for a bit of a more one to sort of ease you into things and sort of maybe settle things down a little bit before going into to your EFL return?
Yeah, I mean, hindsight's a wonderful thing. I would say yes to what you said, but it'd have been one of them things where if we'd have hit the ground running and torn into the first 4 games and I don't know, come out with 3 wins and a draw, America would have been the best thing ever. We'd have had everyone would have talked about how great the facilities were, and I think the way I went out for the first 2 games. I think I remember being in the airport for traveling when I was traveling to Los Angeles, and the players were on a flight even earlier than me. They were there dreary eyed after the match. Had to beat getting beat 5-0 by Chelsea. I think it was 5 o'clock in the morning. They were there getting a flight, and it was just I just kind of looking at stuff like that, and I felt like the club were trying to give a lot back. You know, I was meeting people out there that had driven 13 hours to watch Wrexham for the one and only time they might get to do it. So they were giving so much back to people that have invested a lot of cash and given us this opportunity to get Mullen and co. I just felt like they learned a lot, I think. So when they do it again next year, which I'm pretty sure they'll do it most years, I would say, that and the other caveats are they had the big party in Vegas, then they had their like allotted time off, and then they had a week of training, and then they went. And I feel like, you know, maybe the timing was off. Playing Philadelphia where we didn't get, and nobody had 90 minutes over the tour. So we were going into the MK Dons game and kind of the first 4 games have almost been a pre-season. I hate when Parkinson and the staff say that, because it's not a pre-season. It cost him valuable points. But yet really he's sort of right. You know, we're still building up player fitness. No one's really playing 90s, or they're starting to get there now. And like Matt was saying, you're getting punished. You know, Charlie Austin was really good. Dan Kemp, I thought, was brilliant. I was really, really impressed with him for Swindon. Mo Iser and Jonathan Lecco tore us apart. I mean, MK Dons fans were sort of surprised by that, because they were saying that a Jekyll and Hyde partnership, but they really absolutely ripped us to shreds. I thought, is it Tilly at Wimbledon?
Tilly at Wimbledon, he's very good.
Wow, yeah, brilliant. You know, and then even Walsall, you know, I thought, is it Amari Hutchinson? I thought he got a lot of the ball, and another night, makes us.
Isaac.
It's another Hutchinson.
Isaac
Hutchinson. Thank you, Matt.
There you go. Thank you very much. You know, on another night, he could have easily ran the game. He just didn't get his decision making right. And then, you know, and then we've lost 4 out of 4 games, and it could have gone a different way. But you mentioned the fighting spirit there. I think, look, all the adversity of the tour and maybe not getting that right, not getting the ingredients right. And Parkinson's been quite vocal, really, in saying he's had a couple of indirect jibes about the tour and the fact it wasn't the ideal preparation. It wasn't what he wanted, really. I don't know how much he was consulted on it. But that's gone now. I think we're 4 games in. We're enough into the season now. And we know what to expect. That doesn't mean it's going to change overnight. We've got to go to Barrow, of all places. I mean, that seems like the worst place we could be going under a Pete Wild team, which always seems to do well against us. And we never have a good record at Barrow. But major lessons learned from that tour, I think.
Are you surprised Parky's gone public on it?
In a way, but I think the chairman, the last thing they want is to be surrounded by yes men. Like, they openly admit that they don't know they know about how to market the club and how to turn the club into a global brand, and are doing that with, you know, incredible success. But yet they're looking at Sean Harvey and Phil Parkinson and Steve Parkin and people out to say, no, if we're asking too much, you need to tell us.
Yeah.
And I think maybe they got swept along with it. And what I said to somebody out there is, League 2 footballers will go along with that kind of fanfare. But if you go up the leagues, players will be more demanding, and they won't take a 5 a.m. flight to Denver and, you know, after a game that finishes at 11 o'clock at night. They're going to be more demanding. Players lower down are just, it's what an amazing trip, what an amazing journey.
Almost like Kid in a Sweet Shop type thing.
Right, exactly. And then, you know, the more sophisticated that kid gets, and they've had sweets for a while, they're suddenly going to go, I'm not taking those rubbish sweets that I only want the finest stuff. So, it's look, my main takeaway from the start of the season is that franticness to it. And I don't even think it's been on the terrace. I just think it's been don't really know how to don't know how to defend. They just haven't had to do it for a while. And there's a kind of, right, we're having to defend in every mistake. I mean, I think we gave up 7 shots to Swindon. They scored 5. I mean, that just doesn't happen in the National League. You don't get that someone that clinical. MK Dons had, I think it was 6 shots scored, 5. Or the way it's been is massively unbelievable, really.
Right. You think there's some variants that will kind of level out a bit then?
I do, and I think there's probably a move to be made. You can add Mullen back in. That cliche feel like a new signing.
Yeah, is it October he's due back, Nathan?
Well. Word on the street is that he's been training this week. So whether he could play any part, whether he could be on the bench against Barrow, I wouldn't want to play him at Barrow. That's max of re-injury and he'll get blown over by the gusts of wind at Holker Street. And that'll be the long gone again. So we'll see. I think a lot of people are looking at maybe Tranmere, a away game at Tranmere, his former club. He'd be bang up for it, obviously, as a Merseyside lad. I mean, if he scores the winner at Tranmere, I mean, we'll be carving out the statue already, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think the interesting thing for me, Nathan, is that there was a lot of talk when Mullin got the injury and we knew he was out for a little bit of time. There's a lot of clamour that Wrexham have got to sign a goal scorer. And I was very much sort of in that boat. And, you know, I was looking at someone like James Norwood, who ended up going to Oldham, actually in the National League. But I just wonder whether the form of Jake Bickerstaff, which it's come a bit of a surprise to me, Nathan, because I don't think we even mentioned him in the summer deep dive, which probably shows, you know, where he was in the sort of sphere of consciousness among Wrexham fans. He's actually started the season really well, hasn't he? Is that one of the big positive takeaways for you?
Yeah, I mean, you know, the plan all along, I mean, he wasn't taken on the US tour. The plan all along was this guy's going out on loan. You know,
Yeah,
what quality loan can we get him? Can we get him? He needs to play now. He's not a 18, 19-year-old. He counts towards our squad limit. You know, if we were to keep him, he's not a kid. He's young, obviously, and raw and almost Mullen-esque in the way he's kind of got the gait about him, the run, which isn't a bad thing. I'm not saying he
the
is
gate.
Mullin, but he's like that's what Parky loves to say. The kind of the run, he calls it the gate.
Yeah, it's
And
yeah, something in it, yeah.
yeah, and he's kind of so sometimes you look at him and think, I mean, that's reckless, and you know, his hold up, he's getting brushed off the ball too easily. But almost by the game, I can see him learning now. Knows how to go touch tight and spin a man, and that's real time. We saw it with Sam Dolby last year. You know, real time improvement, which as a fan is unbelievable to see. I love that.
Mm,
People like Ollie Palmer and Paul Mullen, they are what they are now. They're not, you know, they are going to give you what they're going to give you. Jay
sure.
Bickerstaff, I mean, I'm still in the camp, and I'm copping a little bit of flack at the minute among the Wrexham fans that I still think he should go out on loan.
Really?
I still think Wrexham should sign someone because I do think that when Mullin comes back, you've got to be realistic in that Jake Bickerstaff's minutes will go from probably 75, 80 to probably 10, 15.
But
And I
what
think
if?
that stunts his development.
But what if
I
Nathan Paul Mullin comes back and doesn't hit the ground running? Where'd you go then?
You've got to go with Paul Mullen. He just offers even the threat of Paul Mullen will keep defenders thinking. At the minute, it's almost like with Bickerstaff, they don't believe he's gonna do much damage, and that's working in our favour because he's scoring a couple of goals. But I
Interesting.
think if I think Bickerstaff came out this week and said, "Look, I'd be happy to stay, but ultimately I need to play a lot of games. I need to play a lot of minutes." And so he said he'd had a couple of conversations with Parkinson, and they're both on the same wavelength. He needs to be playing 75, 80 all season long. If he goes to the National League and, I don't know, signs for Altrincham or Solihull, somewhere nearby that the club can keep an eye on him, and he gets 15 goals, I think that's better than maybe getting 7 or 8 in League Two with 10 minutes a game.
But
There's
it
two
does leave
schools of
you with
thought.
three
Yeah,
strikers then, Nathan, because you've got Paul Mullin, who's just coming back from injury.
yeah,
Ollie Palmer, who, by the way, not unheard of for him to get injured at certain points in his
yeah.
career. You've got Sam Dolby. Is Sam Dolby going to be a goal scorer? Is he a willing runner, but is he going to grab the goals? So, um,
And Billy Waters, you've got as well. You've got Billy Waters
yeah,
there as
I
well.
don't. I think we've had this discussion before.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm not convinced about him as an out-and-out centre forward. I see him as more
No,
of a rotation
I mean,
option for Ollie
I
Lee
mean,
or
the
Elliot Lee.
poor guy because he started the MK Dons game. We were looping balls over. We were looping balls over like he was Peter Crouch. It was harsh, really, on him. I mean, we were expecting him to do a job that a man twice his size probably should be doing.
Mm,
And you know what it's like. Reaction. We got beat 5-3 on the opening day. Massive. You know, Billy Waters shouldn't play for us again, etc. etc. I feel for him because I just think stylistically, you know, these long throws and well, it's not the most direct football as
but
it has
Elliot
been. You know,
Nathan Elliot Lee
yeah.
has been able to thrive in this Wrexham team, and he's like 5'6", is he?
Right.
So
That's the thing. So if we're going by your mindset of that they're interchangeable, then yeah, maybe so. But Parkinson's not using him in that role. Elliot Lee is basically him and Jordan Davis as a. It's Elliot Lee's been great. Elliot Lee's been the one shining light really of this season so far. But as for the striking option, I mean, I'd I'm still in the camp that I think they will make a move. Will make a splash. I think because there was a
okay,
transfer meeting after the MK Dons game where I'm led to believe the chairman and key figures made it clear they want a pacey striker that can play on the shoulder and get in behind. They saw what Leko and Isa did, and I
mm.
think they thought we don't have anyone like that that
Dolby to an
can.
extent, maybe.
Yeah, but not real pace to burn that's going to
Okay,
scare defenders. And so that was what I heard from the meeting. still nobody
But
get
then,
that, but we'll see.
Nathan, if your style is going to be to put opponents under a lot of pressure and really sort of squeeze up the pitch, which that's my sort of interpretation of it, is there necessarily always going to be the room for a pacey striker to really stretch their legs?
But what I would also say to that is, I think we've realised that the quality in League Two is the gap. The big thing we had all last year was the gap's not that big, like it's not that different, you know. And Stockport fans were saying the same before they went up, and then we've realised actually no, teams can score bagful against us,
Right.
and so it does leave that space in behind. I think it does.
Okay.
Swindon left plenty really. We just couldn't do anything with it because we didn't have we had
Right.
no midfield that could work. You know, had no function in midfield so you know, and quickly back on the defensive point, it's a whole team failure. The teams, as it's been set up, you know, Andy Cannon is not a defensive anchor in midfield. So there's like a massive, well, like a polo in midfield, just a hole straight through us. And then it's leaving, you know, Ben Foster, the stat going round about he conceded 13 goals from 19 shots on target. I mean, that's horrendous. That was the
Yeah.
worst. The worst. But some of them, I mean, there was no, you could have put two keepers in there. They wouldn't have saved them. They were just gifts, you know, right through the team. So it looks bad on him, and I know you're sure you're going to ask about that. But it's, I'm sure you're going to ask
You know
about
me
that.
too well, Nathan.
But it wasn't just him. I have to say, it's partly was on him, but we were offering up. We were serving on silver platters at the racecourse some unbelievable chances that teams couldn't believe.
Yeah, I think the concern that I have with Ben Foster retiring, I can see why he's done it because it's been a bad start and probably just wants to focus on his YouTubing career now. But I do feel like there's that question mark now where you're at a later stage of the window and you've got Mark Howard and Rob Lainton, who I think good League Two goalkeepers, but maybe not the goalkeepers that are necessarily you're confident are going to get you in the top three. Are you looking at the loan market at this stage of the window, do you think?
It's funny. I have a running joke that Phil Parkinson's allergic to the loan market with Wrexham. Every time we get to a point where we probably need to make a loan, he reiterates that he doesn't want to make loan signings. We don't need to make loans. He always says we've got the finance, got the backing to go and buy players that are here for the project and all that. Those buzzword nonsense. We're at a point where we've got 4 goalkeepers on the books. Liam Hall, an 18-year-old from Bradford Park Avenue, you wouldn't imagine he sees anything but the youth team, the kind of under 18s, under 19s. A lad from Sligo Rovers, Luke McNicholas, we don't know what he's going to be like, highly rated in Ireland, but who knows. Rob Lainton, currently injured, sidelined, and is ultimately not, he gets injured regularly, unfortunately for him, he's a good goalkeeper. And then Mark Howard, who came in for a lot of stick last season from the fans, and I was one of them that said in the summer, I think I was on the deep dive with you, Gab, I said, I hope Ben Foster walks away now on the highest of highs. It was never going to get better than 8 games, saving the penalty against Notts County, coming back to your first club, basically, getting us promoted. Happy days. You can't do his match day vlogs in the EFL because of rights restrictions. So it was never going to marry up. It was never going to marry up, really. I didn't see. Obviously, he got too carried away. Heart ruled head, I think. I think he admitted that himself.
Yeah.
Made a decision and then realised quickly, damn, I can't do it. I said, let's go and get Harry Lewis out of Bradford. Whether that would have been possible, I don't know. Or you know, Jake Turner Jake Turner's the best goalkeeper in League Two right now. So you know, but in all seriousness, Wrexham should have gone and if they keep talking about the budget they've got and the turnover they're making, go and flash the cash. Gillingham might have said no, thank you, and Bradford might have said no, thank you. But for me, those kind of moves, players like that, mid-20s, high level, high caliber, that you could maybe take through with you, that would have been a sign that me go, yeah, rather than look, Mark Howard's 34, 35, maybe. Ben Foster was 40. Rob Lainton's 33. I mean, they're not going to be with us for the long term, are they? So maybe not.
Can I just ask a question, Nathan? Do you not think there was a part that you have to say is on perhaps Reynolds and McKellenite and Parkinson and the coaching staff for that as well? Because if they, at the end of last season, they go, right, Ben Foster's come in, helped us get promoted, like you say, highest of highs, Notts County, you're never going to take that away. But then they should have gone, perhaps, I know hindsight again wins all the time, but then perhaps they should have gone, we need to look elsewhere, rather than going back to him and trying to sort of add an extra chapter to this fairy tale or whatever it is, because they knew he was 40 at the end of the season.
You're right.
They could have made the call, and then Ben Foster doesn't have a choice to make.
Yeah, I mean, there was that clip on the pitch at the end as we're celebrating after getting promoted and fans have been taken off and they're giving the medals out, and Ryan Reynolds is on the pitch with Les Reed, who never wants the limelight, and Ryan's saying to him, draw up the contract for Foster, and he's saying, let's run it back one more year. Type of thing where Les Reed, I would have hoped, would have said, let's, we're all drunk on excitement. Let's just pump the brakes here a little bit, because Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, basically, they're fans. They're great ambassadors for the club. They are fans. They don't get involved really. Their mindset is, if Phil Parkinson and Sean Harvey say, let's go and get Ollie Palmer, we'll sign the check to get Ollie Palmer. If they want to get Elliot Lee, we'll sign, because they don't.
And they can do the marketing side of things as well.
They're not going in, Gab and Matt, saying, I've had a look at these Gillingham highlights. I reckon they're not doing that. They're definitely leaving it to Phil Parkinson.
They will be.
I think as well, and what I do think is, I think Ben Foster has saved Phil Parkinson a very, very awkward conversation, because I don't think he would have dropped him. I think there would have just been too much respect there, too much sentiment there.
Really? You don't think Phil Parkinson would have dropped Ben Foster?
I just don't think. I don't know. That's my personal opinion. I don't think he would have done, and that's not. Maybe he would have done. I think, Gab, honestly, I really think they were so high on him in kind of that final 8 games that they didn't want to almost disrespect him in a way by relegating him to the.
I struggle with that, Nathan, just because
maybe
I just feel like Phil Parkinson is so straight down. He doesn't seem to be phased by emotion at all. He's very, like you mentioned there, the emotion of Ryan Reynolds and go and sign the. Phil Parkinson isn't like that. I just feel like the idea of not dropping a goalkeeper because you've got too much respect for them.
But then I would have agreed with you. But then when he allowed Foster to train less than everybody else in the week so he could keep up his media commitments, his YouTube commitments, that wouldn't have been a decision that I would have thought Phil Parkinson would have made when he arrived at the football club. So I think there's been a little bit of, I think he's made some concessions, Phil Parkinson. He's trying to, because at Sunderland, he didn't like the documentary, he didn't like the cameras, none of that. And that clearly was going to have to change. It was spelled out to him early on. If you come in, you're going to have to get on board with this. Otherwise, you're not going to last very long. So he has tried to make concessions, the US tour, Foster, all the marketing that comes with it, the adverts during training, we need to part training because we need to film this advert or whatever. But I think maybe I'm wrong on that, Gab. Maybe, I obviously totally respect your opinion, and maybe he would have just said, but I think ultimately Ben Foster's taken that decision away from him and he's gone, right, that's one out the door. I think Mark Howard will probably be gone in the summer when his contract expires, and then you're going to get a new fleet of goalkeepers. But I asked you when you came on my podcast, so what keepers do you reckon? And all of the ones you said were, young goalkeepers, up and coming goalkeepers that were high end.
Well, Lawrence Vigouroux would have been the dream.
That would have been the dream. That would have been the dream. There you go.
We'll have to wait and see. Matt, from what we've discussed there with Nathan, how do you view Wrexham as a threat in the promotion race? Because obviously they're a little bit away from it at this early stage.
They'll be around it come the end of the season. I'm confident of that, because I think they're quickly realising that they've got to be better defensively. You can't just be giving up chances at this level. I think if Parkinson doesn't rectify that, then he'll be on thin ice very quickly, and you'll get another manager in that would know that that's the issue. They're always going to be a threat at the top end of the pitch, aren't they? So I think there's no issue scoring goals. We've seen that minus Paul Mullin. That's only going to get stronger when Paul Mullin returns, whether that's September, October, November. But I think they've got enough in terms of options at the top end of the pitch, and they've got enough people that create chances for them to muddle through, so to speak, without Paul Mullin. They remind me a little bit of Stockport last season, in a more extreme way. Of course, there's no Hollywood superstars that own Stockport and that type of thing, but I think there's certain similarities for sure. It's taken them longer to adjust. I think Stockport's issue last season was they had more people sent off in the first 6 weeks of the season than they scored goals and won football matches, whereas Wrexham's red cards at the moment are goals conceded and chance being given up. But I think Phil Parkinson's a good enough manager at the level. If he doesn't allow the outside noise and all the razzmatazz and the Hollywood stuff to get in the way of his decision making, and that would have been my point. If Phil Parkinson straight down the middle, would he have perhaps allowed the Hollywood tour to go as late into pre-season if it was at another club? But we never know. We can only surmise and give our opinions. But I think Wrexham will certainly be challenging. They'll be in the top 7 come the end of the season.
Well, Gab and Matt, a quick point I was going to make that it's been really interesting to me. That I think that last season every draw felt like a defeat. He had to win every 111 points. It was like every goal conceded, every draw was a disaster. And I almost think that's warped, myself included, the fan base's mindset is that I mean, what are you going to need? 80 points maybe to get promoted out of League Two? I mean, you two will know
That
better
has
than
been around that in
right.
recent
So,
seasons.
so,
Yeah.
so you can end up with 30. We could lose 10 games compared to last season in terms of, and still have a similar points.
Mhm.
With the rest of it, I think we've kind of got to accept that there was a little bit more room, more margin for error. I know it's not been a great start, and we'd have wanted a better start, but it doesn't need to be perfect. Like we're thinking,
Well,
4 games in, that's our season done.
more margin
It-
for error in some ways and maybe less in others.
I'd agree, but I just think in terms of the points, we're not going to need to get 111 again just to squeak past the
But
next
then,
rival with 4
every
points.
game is harder as well. So, like some of the
You're right.
mistakes you might have got away with in the National League, you're
Yeah.
probably not going to get away with because.
But I think the first 5 games, say we draw at Barrow or get, it's, if anything, better to get that wake up call now than than collapse in the running. It's
Sure.
I think we quite clearly. I mean, Matt said it. We quite clearly know our error here, our problem area. And we've heard all the talk. This is a League One caliber defense. Owen O'Connell's come from Charlton. Ben
Sure.
Tozer's got a team promoted. Will Boyle's come. Probably Championship was too high a level for him, but he's come down from the Championship. Jordan Tunnicliffe's highly rated. Aaron Hayden's got plenty of admirers.
Yeah.
So on paper, I mean, it's not played on paper as we know, but on paper, that's a decent stable of centre backs there.
Sure.
It's just for whatever reason we can't seem to find the three that complement each other the best. That's the problem. That's the ticket here at the minute.
Just finally from me, Nathan, because I really appreciate your time. Just this might sound like a slightly strange question, but I almost wonder if getting promoted again, would it come too early for Wrexham? Not in the sense of the quality of the squad, because we know it's on paper a League One squad or very close to that, and you've certainly got the resources to build that. But it seems very evident from what we've discussed so far, Nathan, that this is a club that's still learning how to be this worldwide global brand that's appealing to people all across the world and be a very serious professional football club that's trying to get out of League Two. Those are two very different sort of objectives. And I think Wrexham seem to be in the process of working out how those two objectives kind of entwine and sort of collide with one another.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I wish I'd have made that on here, Gab. But I do think that is, even things like selling the shirts. I mean, they placed an order for this season of 35,000. It sold out in a day, I think it was. They're still getting to grips with how big is this thing. You know what I mean? We went to America. It's how big is it? And like you said, and also got to go and get a result against Barrow at Holger Street. No, don't worry about whether you can ship enough shirts to Ohio or to California. You've got to go to Holger Street, and Pete Wild's going to be giving it the fist pumps in the away end in front of the home end when he's beat you 1-0, and it's all a moot point, And last season it was a big thing of what's it going to be like. We're going to be distracted when the documentary comes out. There'll be so much more interest. Media will be swarming the football club, and it's out on the 13th of September. So we'll see mid to next month. There'll be a swarm of media again that go to the games. People flying in from all over the world. This is the scene of Welcome to Wrexham, but it's not a movie set and they're not actors. It's a football club with football players that need to get points. And I do think, I mean, me and Rich, who I did the podcast with, he made a very similar point this week that said, if this is a bridge season, it might actually not be the worst thing in the world. I'd still love to go up again because I'm a fan and I want to get promoted. As every fan does. Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds want to get to the Premier League as fast as possible. But to take the hypothetical, imagine if we race through straight to the Premier League. I don't think we'd be ready. I don't think we'd be ready for it. Championship.
No, not ready for the Premier League. That's a bit.
But I'm saying, but like anything, even like League. If say we went to League One, like you say, we might get there and just be that. We've got the money to go and get players, but it might just engulf the whole club that it might just be too much, and I think actually, it's a very good point that if this is a bridge season, it's not a disaster. I mean, look at Stockport. I mean, I thought Stockport were going to be the runaway leaders from the off. I thought, they've had their get to know the league. They missed out narrowly, even with the slow start. I mean, they really missed on penalties in the end against Carlisle.
Sure. Very close to Waterstones as well.
Yeah, very, very close. Could have gone. And yet some Stockport fans I spoke to, obviously, once the disappointment subsided, it's like, we might actually be stronger for that now because we can build again and go into League One with a bit more know-how, a bit more nous. And obviously hasn't worked out that way at the beginning of people call for Dave Challoner or whatnot. But yeah, I think Wrexham have got a lot of learning to do and they need to learn fast. this season, and the same for Notts County. I'm interested when you get Notts County your chap on,
Sure.
but it's a lot of learning to be done, and the problem is you haven't got much time to do that. Nationally, you could go to Dorking and be pretty average and win 3-0 or whatever, and you're all right, and you don't really learn a lot. We're learning a lot about these players now because they're having to defend, they're having to go 50-50s, they're not having it all their own way. And now we're going to see who's in it, who's really in the trenches. That's cliche, but who's going to be with us and who's going to be gone. Because I think come the end of the season, I think there'll be a big clear out. Wrexham didn't do that this summer. A lot of sentiment. Let's try and stick with a lot of the lads that got us there in record points total. I get it. I understand it. Understand the logic.
Sure.
Building a squad for League One, etc. But a lot of these lads have got a point to prove, I think, this season in terms of the point being, are you going to be here for the longer term? Are you cut out for League One if we get there, or are you cut out for anything higher? So I'm just glad we're not going to Priestfield anytime soon until we figure it out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, certainly it's a really curious and fascinating time for Wrexham, and really interesting from my point of view to kind of study it. So I really appreciate your insight, Nathan. What are your plans for Rob Ryan Red for the rest of this season?
Yeah, hopefully it keeps growing and growing. I mean, we were hoping we'd have a few more positive early podcasts, and yet we've dug out the striker. Well, not dug out the strikers, but striker dilemma. We don't know what's going to happen with Jake Bickerstaff. Never a dull week with Wrexham. Ben Foster retires. We're only not even through the first month. We've got Carabao Cup. I'd love us mainly just for the podcast, just to really take it to another level. I'd love to get a plum Carabao Cup if we can get past Bradford. Big if. I don't know if we can, but if we do, I'd love to get like a big Premier League and just really, put Wrexham on a Premier League map. I know it's kind of been the documentary,
but hoping that as well.
Yeah, right. But I don't know. I mean, in the short term, I'd just love to be going on next week's podcast talking about a clean sheet at Barrow. I think if it's a 0-0, I've never been happier to have a 0-0, to be honest. I just think a clean sheet is so good.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, hopefully that clean sheet's coming. Nathan, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it, and all the best for the rest of the season.
Good to meet you, Nathan.
Take care. Speak soon, gents. Take care.
Cheers. Well, I think I'm glad we sort of kept it separate, the Wrexham and the Newport fans. We're now joined by Ed Bridges from the excellent 1912 Exiles podcast. How are you, Ed?
Yeah, good evening, Nosworth. Yeah, you've heard about the football, the television program. Now let's hear about the football club. I'm not bad. More positive than I probably was a month ago.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, let's talk about that, because we use the word written people. I don't think I ever write anyone off in my predictions, because you always make them knowing that there's a possibility of things go the other way. But I'm going to use that sort of term for drama, I suppose. Newport were so many people's pick, including my own, for relegation, and yet Graham Coughlan seems to have created this sort of siege mentality, and the county swarm, as I call it, the pressing game, so evident in that thumping of Doncaster. So you must be really happy with how you've started.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've had 2 thumping wins, as you say, against Doncaster and then Forest Green. So we've shown that we can score goals in abundance. We've also, conceded some as well. But I think just at this point, to have got a couple of big wins, particularly one at home, because our home form last season was atrocious. And yeah, as you say, Coco knows what he's doing. He's good at getting that siege mentality going. That's very much within the DNA of Newport County. And look, it's early days. I'm not getting carried away. Normally, we tend to take quite a cautious view as a podcast and say, wait until we're 10 games in. I think because of the way the fixtures have fallen this season, I'm actually saying I want to wait till we play like 15, 16 games. I'm not drawing any conclusions till basically the end of October, because actually, if you look at it, we've played.
You're so sensible, Ed.
Well, but if you look at it, we've played 2 of the sides who came down from the 3rd division last year. We played Doncaster. We played Crewe, who were not a great side last season. We've got games coming up against Sutton and Wimbledon. It's only really once you get towards like late September, early October, that we start to play, your Bradfords, your Salfords, your Notts Counties, your Gillinghams. And so I think it's really going to take us 15 games, probably 15 league games, before we know with any certainty where County will finish. The one thing that I think we can say with a little bit of confidence now is I am relatively confident that there will be two sides worse than us this season, and that we should have enough about us, I think, on the basis of what we've got, because we're scoring goals even without Omar Bogle.
Yeah.
We've kept some clean sheets despite having some defensive injuries, so all the signs are positive.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, I admire your sort of balanced approach, Ed, because I think it's very easy to get carried away. But I suppose what I'm really taken with is probably the nature of some of the performances, like that victory over Doncaster, where it wasn't like a kind of a 1-0 smash and grab. You absolutely demolished them. And that point about Omar Bogle is a really interesting one for me, Ed, because as much as Bogle is a fantastic goal scorer when he's confident and the right man management and all the rest of it, I do wonder if actually going without him maybe suits the style of play that we've seen from Newport this season.
Yeah, well, like you say, we played this very high press that has. I don't think it will work well all season. I think teams will perhaps get wise to it, and we may have to evolve the style. But it worked brilliantly against Charlton in the Cup. It worked brilliantly against Doncaster. It worked brilliantly against Forest Green. We've got two real Duracell bunnies up front. Seb Palmer-Holden, who we've got on loan from Bristol City, and then Will Evans, the Thank Edwin Eusebio, who has been a revelation this season. I think I said to you pre-season, Gabriel, that he's a player who fans love him, managers love him. He's one of these ones. He gives 100%. He played last season. He played left wing back. He played left back. He played centre mid. He played up front. He probably would wash the manager's car. Iron the team shirts. You name it. Will Evans does it. He's one of those. He came from the Cymru Premier the season before, and yet started the best part of 40 games for us last season. And he wasn't always the one who walked away with the headlines, but what a committed team player. The only thing he was lacking was goals, and we kept saying last season it was about confidence. The classic, if ever a player needed one to just bounce in off their arse, it was Will Evans. This season, it started to come together for him. He got a couple in that win against Doncaster, scored in the first 15 seconds at Forest Green, and he's just on it at the moment. Top scorer in the 4th division. Again, whether he can sustain that all season, who knows? But that's been great to see. The style we're playing clearly suits his pressing ability. This lad, Seb Palmer-Holden from Bristol City, is a big, strong, young lad. Again, he'll have dips and peaks in form, but the two of them up front look great. Yeah, the question is, Omar Bogle, who scored 20 goals last season, can he break back into the side? It's a nice problem to have.
Absolutely. Getting a little bit of crackle back there. I don't know if it's possible to tweak the settings. While I ask Matt, what have you made of Newport's season so far from what we've discussed there?
I think the big positive is what Ed's already touched on, is that they look like they're creating chances and they're taking them chances as well, and that's without their top scorer from last season. I remember Bogle come to Priestfield, I think it was our final home game, and absolutely destroyed us. He was very, very good that afternoon. For us, it looked like a performance of the season, or the second half of the season had very much caught up with us, and we were very flat. But take nothing away from Newport, they played a part in making us look flat, and they deserved their win on the day. My concern in the summer was defensively, and I think them problems are still there in terms of losing some big players at the back. Priestley Farquharson went to Walsall, which was a surprising move for me. I thought he'd have gone higher up. I'd have liked us to have a look at him, but I thought if he'd gone to sort of bottom end League One, it wouldn't have been a surprise. Cameron Norman went left and went to MK Dons as well. I think scored the first goal against us as well. Was a threat. Was good in both boxes. They've been inconsistent, haven't they? But it's the start of the season, and like Ed says, I think every football fan says let's have a look after a dozen games or that type of thing. I know our manager said that last season, and then he changed it to 20 games, then he changed it to
23 games.
and then he said forget the first half of the season, and then he said we were brilliant from January onwards. So everyone moves the goalposts to suit their own sort of needs and requirements to a certain degree, I think. But Newport for me at the moment have almost gone from the sublime to the ridiculous. The games they've won, they've looked really, really good, and then they've conceded loads in other games, and you think there's a concern there, there's a massive issue. They're going to struggle. I've got them, I think I had them 19th. I can have a look in my season preview video.
Around 19th.
21st, even lower. Sorry, Ed. But it comes back to it's such a hard league to predict this year, isn't it? And if Newport go along for the next 12 games to get Ed up to his 16-game thing, and they're winning one, losing one, they're going to be in a decent position, aren't they? We know that's, it's not.
I mean, the one thing that I'd said pre-season is I was fully expecting us to draw a lot of games, which shows I know nothing because we haven't drawn a single game yet. So go figure.
Who knows? I suppose I want to ask you about a couple of the defeats, Ed, because there was that 3-0 loss at Accrington Stanley, but from what I can gather, that was actually a game where Stanley sort of were pretty clinical with the chances they had, and you didn't really, maybe Evans and Palmer Holden hadn't quite found their goal scoring boots at that occasion, and you had a few chances that didn't quite go your way. Was maybe a more even game than possibly the scoreline suggests?
Yeah, and I mean, opening days are always peculiar things. I think the scoreline slightly flattered Accrington, and Newport maybe left it a bit late before kind of getting our mojo going. I wouldn't read too much into it. Like I say, it's so difficult at this point to draw any firm conclusions. What I do think, though, I think Saturday's game against Sutton is going to be fascinating because they play a very similar style to us. High press, lots of badgering from the forwards. I think that'll be quite a good revelation in terms of how we're looking against a team who play a similar sort of style. Because when we've hammered teams like we did against Forest Green and Doncaster, we were playing teams who were not perhaps expecting to be harassed the way that we did. Whereas I think, Sutton, it'll be a good tactical matchup.
So Ed, who are the players you think have come out of the start of the season with real credit? We've talked about Will Evans, the strikers, and Seb Palmer Holden there. Who else would you bring up? Because there was quite a bit of turnover in the summer, wasn't it?
There's always a lot of turnover. We're one of those clubs who, if players are doing well at Newport, then we'll do well to hold on to them for more than a season or two. Ryan Delaney has come in at centre-back. Captain of the team, looks a very assured presence. I think that back line is still a bit of a work in progress because of injuries. James Clark has been injured. We've had further kind of troubles with that back line, but that feels like it's coming together slowly. And then Adam Lewis at left wing back, who we had back from Liverpool. We had him last season, did really well, was just starting to come into his own, and then got injured. We've got him back again this year, and he looks. It's rare to see fans get so excited by the signing of a left back, but he is definitely one who gets fans on their feet.
Yeah, haven't you also got Matty Bonswell, who plays left back as well, on loan from Newcastle?
Yeah, now we signed Bonswell quite early in the summer. I think if we knew that Lewis was going to come in, we maybe wouldn't have done that. But I think it's great to have that competition for places. I'm not sure yet whether we can accommodate both of them, but if we switch from a 5 at the back to a 4 at the back, then you potentially can, because Lewis can play higher up the pitch. But Adam Lewis, just for his slide tackles alone, is the sort of player who I like to see in an amber shirt. So they're the ones who've caught the eye probably so far. Like I say, I think a little bit is going to change a bit over the coming weeks with when Bogle comes back and potentially once you start to have the likes of James Clark back as well. But it's shaping up nicely.
Yeah, well, hopefully that good start to the season can continue. What are your plans for 1912 Exiles for the rest of the season, then, Ed?
Oh, we'll keep plugging away. I think last season we averaged an episode every week. I think we'll certainly manage to keep doing that with a mix of match reports and reviews. We also are doing a lot of talking about off-field stuff this season because the club is potentially going to be subject to a takeover bid over the months ahead. So we'll be watching that closely. We've also managed to have a couple of really good interviews and specials recently. We had a good special edition with the club's community arm that I thought was really, really nice. And then this week we released an interview with Rob Phillips, who is a football correspondent at BBC Radio Wales and a county fan, as it happens. And he gave us some really interesting insights from his 30-odd year career reporting on football in Wales, reporting on county, and that was an excellent listen. So that's one that won't just be of interest to county fans, but anyone who follows football in Wales will know who Rob Phillips is, and it was a really good interview by my colleague Jamie.
Yeah, marvellous. Well, go check out 1912 Exiles, because I know you do some fantastic stuff. And thanks for joining us, Ed.
Nice to see you all. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you. Matt, I wanted to have a chat to you about League Two and how it's shaping up as a whole at the moment. Obviously, we've got to talk about Gillingham, top of the league again. Bit of a smash and grab, that one at Crawley, wasn't it?
I'm not sure smash and grab. Crawley
Okay.
certainly deserved something, but we still had our moments second half. If we'd scored a second goal, I think we'd have gone on and won comfortably. There was a chance. We didn't start either half well. That was the clearest thing. We were slow out the blocks both periods. We got punished with the penalty, and then luckily didn't get punished with what was quite frankly an awful spot kick from Dom Telford. Luckily, but yeah, second half we gave up 2 chances to the lad Horsey as well. I think he scuffed one edge of the box. If he'd got a proper connection, I think he scores, and then it's a very different game because suddenly they're shooting towards their fans at that end, and they've got 40 minutes to go and get a winner. And obviously we've not conceded a goal, so we don't know how we're going to react when that does happen. And also, I think I've said before, I've certainly said it on one of our shows, yes, we've kept 4 clean sheets, but there's been 2 disallowed goals and a missed penalty in them 4 games. So Sutton, I think it looked very tight. That would have gone to 1-1. That was Scott Cashkit as well, ironically. The Stockport one, I think opening day was the correct call. I think Madden had gone far too early. So it's not been perfect. But at the same time, you earn your luck. And I think we've deserved that luck from the way that we've defended and we've played and we've pressed from the front. But no, Crawley deserved something 100%, but I don't think it was just a smash and grab. I think we had 2 chances in a sort of 5-minute spell, middle of the second half, where I think there was a header from Shadrach Ogie got cleared off the line, and then Scott Malone rebound shot was tipped over.
What a signing, by the way, Shadrach Ogie.
I thought you was going to say Scott Malone. The pair of them have been absolutely ridiculous. But yes, there was. I don't know if you've seen it on the highlights. There's a clearance from Ogie. I think with about 20 minutes to go. I think it was the lad Ransom who'd scored the own goal, and he absolutely levered one from about 25 yards. And I think for all the world, I mean, we was the other end, but sometimes you just get a sense that's going in. And as Ogie appeared from absolutely nowhere and took it full in the face, like just to get it out for a corner. There was one at Stockport, diving header clearance to a shot. It reminds me of Gabby Zakwani in the way he looks like him with that sort of cornrow hair as well. But he's just a proper centre half.
Do you know what? I feel like you've missed someone like a Zakwani for a few years now. You know.
I think Maxima's better when he's got a really aggressive centre half next to him. And I think he's got that now in Ogie, or he'll have it when Conor Masterson gets back in the side, and that's the biggest thing for me. And Neil Harris has said it.
What a lovely dilemma that is.
It's unbelievable. Like for me, Conor Masterson, I've said this to you and I've said it on my shows, is if not the best, he's in the top 5 best centre backs in the division. He's not getting a look in. I think he's had 10 minutes at Sutton. I think he's probably got to wait for Luton, to be honest, unless anything happens between now and Saturday. But yeah, there was the chance from Malone, and then there was a chance shortly after that. I think the ball dropped in the box and Ashley Naderson crashed one against the crossbar. So yeah, not completely smash and grab, but Crawley certainly deserved something from the game based on what I saw. And I certainly don't think Crawley will be in any trouble if they replicate that type of performance over the rest of the season. Again, it's very early, we understand that, but they've started brilliantly. If you look at the 4 games they've played against sides that I think most people are now saying are going to be top end of the table, they've had a brilliant start. But yeah,
do you know what? That's a really interesting theme, isn't it? I mean, we don't want to be too sort of judgmental 4 games in, but we've just talked to Ed, the Newport fan, and how they've started really well. Newport and Crawley were my bottom 2. And you're kind of immediately
my bottom 2, mine were Crawley and
so
Harrogate, I think.
You're almost questioning. Even I almost want to go to the top 7 as well, because you got Wimbledon where people were questioning Johnny Jackson. I don't think there was a huge amount of optimism around Accrington, Stanley and Morecambe this season. Barrow were my pick for promotion, but that was a bit of a left field chat. So it does feel like there's this sort of weird trend at the moment where there's lots of teams who are kind of doing better than expected.
I think that's it, and that's the exciting thing, and it's interesting to see if that continues. You've got a lot of teams that you'd probably say are underachieving. Your Bradfords, your Doncasters, your Wrexhams. I think Notts County will adjust to it quicker than Wrexham because they've not got all that fanfare to deal with. But then, like you say, the teams that you've mentioned, they're absolutely flying. They're overachieving at the moment. It'd be interesting to see whether they can do it over a longer period of time. My only concern with Crawley is it's a very young side. If they do lose a couple, then do the heads drop quickly? Does the confidence then drain out of them fairly swiftly? But I said to the Crawley fan we had on our match day review show on Sunday, I think in Scott Lindsay, they've got one of the best in the division. He's been so good at not just the football side, but the fact that he's managed to go into a football club that's in complete disarray, and he's managed to just separate training Saturday, Tuesday from all the wag me nonsense and the noise. He's just made it background noise, and he's gone, right, give me enough to be able to get my players over pre-season and put my stamp on it, and I'll give you a good football team. And I thought they were very, very good on Saturday, and I really hope that they do continue to thrive. Obviously, not at Gill's expense, but we've seen too many clubs struggle in recent years because of poor ownership, and it needs to stop one way or another. And I really hope that Crawley have got the start of something here, because if you go back pre-Wagme, I know the John Yems thing didn't end very well, and we'll leave it there. But they had a proper football team of solid league pros that you knew would do a job and did exactly what they said on the tin, like Glenn Morris, Tony Craig, Jake Hessenthaler, Jack Payne, Nadders, Nichols. I know we've pinched a few and taken advantage of that situation, but George Frankham shouldn't be playing National League for me. They've had the heart and soul ripped out of that football team, and let's just hope that they don't have the heart and soul ripped out of the football club. And I hope that they do have a decent season, and I'll be happily proved wrong that if they don't finish anywhere near 24th. But yeah, let's talk about Gills more.
Well, Tom Nichols and Ashley Naddison seems to be the main sort of combination, the route to chances for Gillingham, and they seem to have sort of rekindled that understanding that they had at Crawley.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I think two of Nadder's 3 goals so far have been set up by Tom Nichols, both in the league. The through ball at home to Accrington after the Jake Turner kick downfield, and then I think Nico did really well at Sutton to pinch possession, and Naddison made a good run to the back post to get off of his man and slot it in from sort of 6-7 yards. I think they give us very different traits. I think it's a very good combination. Nichols will drop deeper, link play, bring midfielders into play, whereas you know what you're going to get with Nadders. He's going to be in your face, closing everything down, chasing lost causes, stretching teams, and playing on the shoulder. And we've seen that so very early, and long may it continue, because Macaulay Bond's still not up to speed, so we've got to bide our time with him. Neil Harris has said today that Ollie Hawkins is still a few weeks away, so this injury issue we've had in pre-season seems to be getting worse, if not better, at the moment. So it could be sort of October time before we see Ollie. So we've had to adjust the way that we played, because we know last season Ollie Hawkins played a huge part in that turnaround from January. But I think Macaulay Bond might be the difference maker. If I'm not saying from the starting games, but he just looks like that fox in the box, and we've seen it in cameos. Just looks a very clever footballer at the level. But you've got to have people backing you up behind you to be able to go and thrive in the final third, and we've certainly had that. First 4 games, the only goal we conceded was against Southampton, who came out of the Premier League last season, and that was.
And you beat them 3-1. So
the game was gone by then as well. It's not like it was 1-1 and then we had to go again. That was last 5-10 minutes. It was definitely just it comes into the consolation bracket, and I think that was the biggest frustration that night. It should be 5 clean sheets from 5 games, but you've got good options all over the park now, which is great. We had chats this time last year, and we had players. I mean, they were consistent because they were crap all the time. But now we've got, like, if Shay Alexander comes out, then Robbie McKenzie can play right. Like Max Clark's not been in the squad the last 2 games. He won promotion last season out of this division. He's not been in the 18. It's phenomenal. And because Max Clark came in, and we was all like, we've got one of the best left backs in the division, like based on what we've seen last season and looking at his stats.
Well, certainly one of the most consistent.
And now all of a sudden, he can't get in the team because we've signed a bloke who played 35 championship games last season. But that's come because Neil Harris and the Gallinsons and Kenny and Hesse have fostered this type of environment where people want to play. Scott Malone wasn't someone that we were chasing. Scott Malone came to Neil Harris and said, "Can I come in and train?" Enjoyed it so much that he's ended up signing a contract. Same with Macaulay Bond. Macaulay Bond came to Neil Harris because I think he knows a few of the Charlton lads in terms of Johnny Williams, Lapsley. I think Derrin, the goalkeeping coach, was at Charlton for a period as well. And he said, "Can I come in and get fit?" He signed a contract. It's incredible, the turnaround, both on and off the pitch. And we're signing players that this time last year you wouldn't have even entertained. It'd have been like, if someone had said we're linked to Macaulay Bond last year, you'd have got carried off and put in a funny farm.
Yeah. Brilliant stuff. I did want to talk to you a little bit about some of the. Again, we've got to kind of tread very lightly here at this stage of the season because we are only 4 games in. You've got to give it 10 games to see how things level out. But so far, it's been disappointing starts, I would say, for Wrexham, for Stockport, for Bradford, Tranmere, and most of all Doncaster Rovers.
Definitely.
Which of those 5 would you say you're pretty confident are going to pick up in the next few weeks, and which of those would you say you're kind of worried about?
Stockport and Wrexham will pick up for me.
Yeah,
I'm going to put my neck on the line very early.
Yeah,
We've spoken, haven't we, to Nathan? There's no issue with Wrexham in terms of creating chances, scoring goals. So they've only got to sort out one end of the pitch.
Yeah,
I get that it's been quite an issue.
And if Mark Howard can come in and sort of steady the ship in the goal, because it felt like Wrexham were conceding from literally every shot on target. So even if Mark Harris is okay, then Mullin coming back, I think, I agree. I think they'll pick up. And Stockport, of course, once Carl Wootton comes back. But Doncaster have had an awful start with 1 point from their first 4 games. Bit of concern there, considering the expectations going into it.
Yeah, I think so. Just quickly for Tranmere, I don't think are going to finish any higher than mid-table, so I'm not entirely surprised by them. Bradford, I had outside the playoffs, so I think there's issues there. The fans are not happy with the change of system. I'm not sure they're entirely on board with the signings that they've made. And I did say to you earlier on, if my concern was if Andy Cook doesn't replicate the goal scoring form of, and I think you said the same. They relied on a handful of players last season to carry him to 4th.
Yeah.
If them players don't perform to the same levels, and I've seen whispers on social media of Harry Lewis, Andy Cook's form's dropped off, then they suddenly look not average, but they certainly don't look a top 3 side.
Yeah, I think average is the word. Yeah, I think it's been very worrying.
Doncaster, I am concerned about, and I know it's only 4 games, and because I spoke to who did we? Oh, we had Dan on last week, didn't we? And we said we hope that Grant McCann's given time if the Notts County game, and I think it's MK Dons this weekend. If they don't go well, you've got to give time to the new project. But there's already people saying Richard Wood should be dropped. My big issue with Doncaster is they've been in a state of malaise at best for the last 2 years. I mean, they were like us. Like, we know all the teams that came out of League One season before last all struggled last season.
Yeah.
Just how quickly is the fan base going to turn on the club again, and the powers that be at the top, and then it becomes toxic, and then you're fighting a losing battle and pissing into the wind, so to speak. Sorry to be blunt.
Yeah.
It becomes a very difficult environment to operate in. Yeah, a little bit concerned. Not for my own personal glory, because I had them in the playoffs, but I just think it's not going to take a lot for that Doncaster fan base to become very, very hostile towards everyone.
Well, it felt like they brought in those players over the summer to try and sort of lift the mood around the club. But I think really there needs to be a fundamental structural change, because they can't go on a big spending spree every summer. At one point, they've just got to try and get their house in order and try and get a bit better at the basics. And
you've got to start and do everything right from the top down. And it reminds me of us a little bit. And it took us a takeover. I'm not saying that's going to happen there, but you need, like you say, a fairly seismic change to just change the whole pattern and mood around the football club, because it will filter down. If there's boardroom unrest or whatever, filters down to the management, the coaching team, onto the players. It certainly filters into the stands. And yeah, it's worrying times, because I'm not sure they're a fan base that will want to see this continue for too long. The only saving grace might be that Grant McCann, previous job, has maybe got a bit of credit in the bank, but it's a result.
I think if it was a rookie who you had no idea about, you'd be very. I think there'd be a lot even more.
Oh, if it was Schofield or someone, McSheffrey again, the atmosphere would have gone already. I'm convinced of that.
Whereas with McCann, I think there's probably a little bit more hope that, given what he's done before, that that maybe he can get things right. But yeah, I think it's a worrying time for Doncaster. So hopefully they can get things right. Matt, great to have you on the podcast, and cheers, mate. Really appreciate your time. Thanks to you for watching at home. This has been EFL Debate, the League Two podcast, and we'll see you again next week.